Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to be talking about lesson 2.1, and we're going to do a lot of converting from one type of number to another. So we're going to start with converting decimals to fractions, and fractions to decimals. Laura, it's the longest title ever. So we're just going to be practicing some things we've already talked about. First off, I want to talk about a word that's super important, and that's the word rational number. Now you should think back to the chapter we just covered, and you should hear the word ratio, or see it spelled out. So ratio, remember, was a fancy way of saying fraction. So what is a rational number? Definition is any number that can be written as a fraction or as a ratio. Okay, so what kind of numbers are these? Pretty much everything we've studied. Whole numbers. I just give it a denominator of 1, it's a fraction. Fractions, by definition, they're a fraction. And decimals. You're like, well, how can you do that? Well, we just kind of read it using place value, and then we can write it as a fraction. So we're going to practice both of those ways, and we may come up with some different ideas in class as well. So let's start with decimals to fractions. Decimals to fractions. So this one's the one that deals with place value. So we're going to have to remember our place value. Oh, that's terrible. That doesn't look very good. There we go. Place value. And you're going to read the number. So you don't say 3.2, you say 3 2/10. Okay. And then let's do a couple of examples. So let's say we have 0.45. That's not how we would read it. We would read it as 45 hundredths. Since the 5 is in the hundredths column, we read the name of the column the last digit is in. Okay? So then I take that idea and I take the 45, that's going to go in my numerator, and then I'm going to take the denominator and I'm going to make it a number. So it'd be the same as 4,500 over 100, okay, 45 hundredths. I do need to simplify. I notice I can divide a 5 out of each of those. Let's see, and 45 divided by 5 is 9, and 100 divided by 5 is 20, okay? So we would get the answer of 9/20. So again, let's just remind you, must simplify. So that was a big problem. People did not want to simplify ratios. They ended up getting some points off on their test. All right, so let's go the other direction. Fractions to decimals. Okay, fractions to decimals. So we have two different methods that you can use, and you're going to have a choice. I'm going to tell you what I think is a better method, just because it's faster in my mind. But you may think, no, that seems too long for me. So we're going to talk about method 1, and that's going to be this equivalent fractions. Okay, so the problem is with this idea is that unless you do different type of math and maybe even have to use a calculator if things don't work out, you aren't always going to be able to get your denominator to become a place value number, so something that ends in a 0. So if you can, then this method's pretty fast. Okay, so we have 2/5, and we want to change the denominator into something that's going to be a 10, 100, 1,000, so on and so forth. So we're going to scale up or back. Up means to multiply, back means to divide. To get the denominator to be one of the place value, like a 10, 100, 1,000, or so on. Okay? So for us, let's see, I can get 5 to become a 10 by multiplying by 2. So if I divide the numerator by 2, 2 times 2 is 4. Okay? So I would get this fraction, change the color here, would be read as 4/10. And then that tells me how I'm going to write it. So I'm going to have a 4. It's going to go in the tenths column. So that's 1 digit after the decimal point, just like there's 1 0 in there. Okay? So this one is limited. So I'm going to write that word here. Limited use. Okay, because again, if you can't get the denominator to become 10, 100, or 1,000, this one doesn't work. Okay, so let's talk about method 2. And that's going to be to divide. So remember how this works. You have a numerator, and it's over a denominator. So remember, we're starting with a fraction. So then, what do? Well, we're going to rewrite the problem so that we're going to create that little division house. And the numerator is going to go underneath or inside. The denominator is your divisor, so he's going to go outside. And your answer is going to be the decimal on top. Okay? And what I like about this guy is it works every time. So again, my preference would be method 2 because then it's always going to work. Might be a little longer, you might be a little rusty with your division, but it's still going to work. All right, so I'm going to go to the next page, and we are going to put a little place value column thing up at the top. So this is going to be kind of fun because we're going to be turning sideways. So we have thousands, hundreds, tens, ones, oops, and then it begins. We have tenths, oops, we have hundredths, and we have thousands. So now I'm going to turn my iPad sideways and I'm going to write those words. So thousands, hundreds, tens, ones. Now we get those, the TH. So we're like lisping. Tenths, hundredths. So look at the parallel here. Tens have 1 0, and tenths have 1 digit after the decimal point. Hundreds have 2 zeros, and hundredths has 2 digits after the decimal point. Thousands has 3 zeros, and thousandths has 3 digits after the decimal point. Okay, so we can kind of use this as we're trying. So the directions are going to ask us write each decimal as a fraction, in simplest form. Now, that phrase, in simplest form, doesn't need to be given to you because you always reduce to simplest form. Okay, so number 1, we've got this guy. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put him, here's where the decimal point is, right? Okay, so if I have 8 tenths, it would look like that. Okay, so I'm going to have 8 in the tenths, so 8 tenths. And then I notice they're both even, so I can divide out of 2. And that gives me a final answer of 4 fifths. Okay, let's try another one. We have 0.28, so let's line up over here. So notice that the 8 it ends up in the hundredths column. So this would be read as 28 hundredths. So we're going to write it as 28, no decimal, over 100. So say, well, they're both even, so I can divide out of 2. So let's do that. And that's going to give me 14 fiftieths, but they're still both even, so I can divide out of 2. And that gives me 7 25ths. Okay, let's do one more. We have 0.125, so again, to get the 5 into its own column, it would go all the way to the thousandths. So this is actually 125 thousandths. All right, well, let's see. There, you can divide by a 5. 5 goes into 12 twice, which is 10 with 2 left over, and into 25 5 times. 5 goes into 10 twice, and there's 2 zeros. Okay, I can divide out another 5. 25 divided by 5 is 5. 5 goes into 24 times, and there's a leftover 0. And then, oops, I can divide out another 5. And we finally get to the answer of 1/8. Okay? All right. What happens if we're dealing with mixed numbers? Let me give you an example. It takes about 4.65 quarts of milk to make a pound of cheese. Oh, I don't know where that came from. While. And I'm supposed to say right? Okay. This amount as a mixed number in simplest form. Okay, so I'm just going to read it and write it. 4 and 65 hundredths. 4 and 65 hundredths. So if I drew it over here, 4 and 65 hundredths. Okay, then I'm going to simplify. I know 5 can go into both of those. I still have the 4. 5 goes into 6 once with 1 left over. 5 goes into 15 3 times. 5 goes into 10 twice evenly, and there's a leftover 0. So my answer is 4 and 13 quarts of milk. Okay. All right. Let's go the other direction. Write each fraction as a decimal. Okay. Oops, let's see, that's number 5. Here, helps if I make it nicer. 5, there we go. So let's say we've got 3/5. Now, if you can get 5 to become a denominator that is 10, 100, or 1,000, then this is actually the fastest way to do this. If I multiply 5 by 2, I get to 10. So if I multiply 3 by the same thing, I get 6. So now that I have it as 6/10, I just read it, and I get 6 in the tenths column. Okay, if I decided to divide, remember we put in the decimal point, bring it straight into the quotient, annex a 0. 5 goes into 3 0 times, 5 goes into 36 times evenly. Same answer, 2 different strategies, okay? All right, this one. 102 over 250. So I'm going to do division on this one. Let's see, put in a decimal point. 250 cannot go into 1,002 or 102. Then I'm going to add a 0. So 250 goes into 1,000. Let's see. 2 of them is going to give me 500. So 4 of them would give me 1,000. So that's going to give me, let's see, 1,000. Doom, 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 doom. So we get this. And then, let's see, 250, let's see, I have to bring down a 0. 250 can't go into 200. So 250 into 2,000. Well, 4 was 1,000, so double 4 would give me double 1,000. So that would be 4 twice would give me an 8. So that's 0, 40, 16 and 4 is 20. So we get, it's 408 thousandths. Now somebody might say, hey, you know what? I could have done it the other way. Okay, so let's see. We just had mentioned that we can get 250 to equal 1,000 if we multiplied 250 by 4. So if we multiply the top by 4, we get 408, and then we read it 408 thousandths, and that's how we would write it. So those are our two choices. All right, good luck with this, guys. Bye now.